to another episode of the Contact Listens podcast. I am Michelle, and as always, with me is my wonderful co host, Azita. We are here this week to talk about something that you may or may not have heard of: collective care. Collective care is something that is now being explored because I think we're all realizing that self care, and most of you have heard of self care, just might not be enough. We are told to take care of ourselves by podcasts, social media, television shows, our work, our doctors, all of the people around us a lot of the time. But I think sometimes we realize, and you may know this too, that self care just isn't enough. And collective care is really one of those key pieces that we need to take care of ourselves and to take care of one another. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about that today. So before we dive in, Azita, I'm curious, when you hear the phrase collective care, what comes to mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, and I had not heard about collective care before you and I started talking about it. So I'm really interested in this topic now. The first thing that comes to mind is community and how a lot of times, even in a group, we may still feel alone.
Right. And Azita and we do crisis intervention and suicide prevention, and probably most of the people that reach out and talk to the crisis counselors that we have here at Contact Careline, that loneliness or that isolation is a key piece into why they're needing the support of one of the great people that do the work that we do, for sure. So yay. Well, I'm glad that you are excited to talk about this topic because I'm really excited to chat about it today as well.
So I think our viewers probably would like to know, what is collective care? Michelle, what is collective care?
Yes, absolutely. That's probably a good place to begin the foundation of what we're going to talk about today. And like we said, self-care, we all know what it is. Collective care, I think the name in itself probably gives you a bit of an idea, but let's really get down to the focus of what the definition is. And I want to give credit where credit is due. Vicki Reynolds is a researcher, a an advocate. She is an author. She has her own website that will be in the links in the description of this podcast. But she coined the term collective care. And what it is it is a practice of a community, team, or group taking shared responsibility for the well being of all of its members. She does a lot of work in the opioid crisis. And so, because of the spiritual pain of the work that she does, she's seen that the only way to sustain yourself in those really tough emotional jobs is by shouldering one another up and caring for one another. And as she's realized that that's been useful in her field, it has then kind of toppled into other fields like crisis intervention and more into workplaces, homes, and communities, just as a concept overall. So want to give her the credit for that for sure. But that's what it is. It's how do we take care of each other and make sure that we're supporting one another. And so it has a systemic focus. It shifts the duty of wellness from the individual to the community. And we were talking as we were preparing for this podcast about how we see that show up. So, what Azita and I have noticed is in our crisis counselors, as they start to develop and gain experience, asking them if they're taking care of themselves just isn't enough. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. Yes, because you can do all of the things. You can do the mindfulness, you can do the nutrition and the sleep hygiene, the exercise, all of these things. But especially in a helping field, sometimes it's just not enough.
Yeah, I think I've talked to lots of people that do crisis work, and if the focus is solely on self-care, it feels like it's my responsibility or it's my fault
Yes.
if
Yes.
I'm not able to maintain my role or if I'm feeling burnt out.
Right. Yes. And it makes me think about something I heard, that resilience in an individual, it's important, it's all well and good, but it kind of shifts the focus, like you said, onto the responsibility of the individual instead of having that community responsibility of caring for each other. Now it's you're kind of on your own and you're doing great, resilience. But if that care was more spread out, maybe we wouldn't need to have those resilience skills quite so strong.
Yeah. And it was so funny. You all might realize this as podcasts go on, but I do a lot of running that clears my head. And I was thinking about this exact thing, Azita. When it comes to resilience, what you'll see people talk about over and over is it's that ability to bounce back. I can
Yeah.
bounce back from a tough time in my life. I can bounce back from a setback at work. I can bounce back from a really challenging call, maybe with someone who was having some strong thoughts of suicide. But that bouncing back, I was thinking of collective care as that trampoline that you fall onto that helps you bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
That's what collective care is if there's nothing there to catch you, you're not going to be able to bounce back. And that's what collective care is. It's how can I be part of that trampoline for you, Azita, so that when you're struggling, you can fall down, I can help you bounce back. And I think that's a really great way to think of it. I love that so much.
And I think it's a great segue into the next point about collective care, which is mutual support.
So I think with mutual support, that's kind of the next thing that we want to talk about. And that's exactly what we started to get into there is that members of a group actively look out for one another, and that looking out for one another helps to prevent or maybe even just to combat that exhaustion and that isolation. For us in the work that we're in, it would be unreasonable to think that you're never going to be just completely exhausted at the end of a shift, and we work remote, so we feel isolated a lot of the time. So yeah, I think looking out for each other is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the remote aspect makes it a lot harder, and I think you have to be more intentional about it too. Whereas in a workplace where everybody's in the same building, you're going to see people, you're going to maybe pick up on signs that, well, this person's maybe needing some support, or this, situation maybe is causing some stress to this group of people. But that may not be super apparent when it's all taking place online.
Yeah. And I think that online thing you just said is important though. We work remotely. Our organization works remote. And a lot of people work remotely, but the more I think about it, we live remotely in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. We text one another over calling one another. We do meetings. Lots of people prefer meetings with cameras off. We are engaging in social media. And so that's maybe just where society is shifting in a lot of ways is it's a remote society. It's a great thing because you might be able to make a connection with someone across the world, but maybe you don't know your neighbors.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you mentioned social media. I think everyone knows that it's a double-edged sword. You could make a close connection with somebody anywhere in the world, and there's also so much potential for just endless, shallow connections that maybe don't add to your well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. We all know that algorithm loves the doom scroll. It capitalizes off fear and disgust even. I was reading in a AI article that I get every single day. So, yeah, I think that remote aspect that a lot of people experience at work more and more, maybe we're experiencing that at home too, and that just leaves us feeling disconnected even though the purpose is to make us feel more connected.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then the last thing I think in this topic, just to kind of outline what collective care is this idea of shared heavy lifting. So it involves openly sharing the emotional and practical burdens of difficult work or difficult life. And that goes back to the social media thing too. Whereas I think most people are sharing the best versions of their life on social media, and we might get a skewed perspective of what others are really experiencing. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's absolutely valid. Some people may say, "Oh, I'm having a bad day," as a Facebook post or something like that. And then maybe other people are quick to jump in and say, "Oh, you got this. Everything's going to be okay." Or, "Let me know if you need anything." And most of the time, even those things are a little bit shallow, that
Mm-hmm.
let me know if you need anything. It doesn't quite get to that I am here and I care, and do you want to tell me what's going on and we can hold this together? And then, like you said, a lot of people are just posting the highlight reels of I went to the pool today and I looked really cute in my outfit and look how precious my dog is. So
Yeah.
it kind of doesn't always scratch the surface and get to some of that meaty stuff that could really be affecting us.
Yeah. We're missing vulnerability and
Ooh,
authenticity.
ooh,
And so when we're talking about like really being able to be there for one another, that requires both of those things on the part of both people. So the person that's struggling has to have the courage to say, "Hey, Azita, I'm really having a hard day today." And you, Azita, would have to have the courage to really stop and recognize that person needs somebody to talk to and be able to be there for them and actually
mm,
take the time to dig deeper and provide that support that they really need. It's something I think that's really hard for people to do more.
mm. I love that. You mentioned authenticity, vulnerability, and courage. Those are huge. And I really wasn't expecting those words in this topic, but absolutely. You have to be vulnerable enough to be open about your struggle and your pain. And you have to be authentic if you're going to show these things. And then, as somebody who's providing care in that moment, you have to be authentic as well. You can't care for somebody inauthentically. I think those just maybe are mutually exclusive. And then as
Yeah.
far as the courage part, I thought for a second, where do you get that courage? How does that courage come about if you don't already have it? And I think the answer is you've got the proof because the community, the collective is showing you through repeated practice. Like that's just part of this community. We're going to do that
Yeah.
for each other.
Yeah. And that repeated practice, that's one of the things that Vicki Reynolds does with her the groups that she works with and for the different organizations that she goes and talks to is she has this idea of solidarity talks or solidarity times, and those are like scheduled times that people that work together, they will get together and just talk about the spiritual pain of what the work is like and be able to, in a non judgmental space, say, "This is what I'm struggling with." Hearing other people say, "Yeah, I'm having a hard time with that too." I mean, that is
Mm-hmm.
so powerful to know that you're not alone in
Yeah.
whatever it is you're going through.
Absolutely. And that's a big thing in the counseling world, this universality. Like, you're not alone with this. And just knowing that, like you said, is so powerful. I think a lot of us feel very siloed in our emotions and our experiences. And just knowing that somebody else is going through that too lets you
Yeah.
see that, okay, this is something that people deal with.
Yeah.
And we can deal with it together.
A new mom. I was a first time mom. I was isolated. I didn't have any family that lived near me. And so I had a new moms group that I was part of that at least once a week it would get us all out of our pajamas and to the meeting room, and we would get to see other new moms struggling just like we were. And that was just so powerful to know that what I was going through and how I was feeling, just having somebody across the room say, "Oh my gosh, I felt the same way yesterday, or I feel the same way today." It really helped to, I mean, we talk about normalization and validation so often
Yeah.
in the work that we do as clinicians, and obviously not everybody knows those specific terms, but when you feel like somebody understands you and then feels like somebody's telling you that they're going through that too, that this is normal or this is common to struggle this way, it just makes such a huge difference because it goes back to the collective care. You don't have to carry it by yourself anymore if you know somebody else is going through the same thing.
Absolutely. And what you said just now about understanding, like that's going back to a different podcast episode a couple of months ago, that active listening piece. I think one of our values at Contact, one of our beliefs that we work from is the first thing that has to happen if we're going to help is to listen and understand. And that
Yeah.
feeling of being understood is so essential to
Yeah.
healing.
We need to work, like you've said, and other times we're social beings and we need to not feel alone, and that is one of the things that we in the work that we do, I think we're trying to help people feel not alone. And that's the primary focus for the crisis work that we do. But that's
Hmm.
not just for crisis work, that's for everybody, no matter where you're at. I think people want to feel like they're part of something to whatever extent they're comfortable, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that makes me think about it makes me think about other types of communities. Like you said, it doesn't have to be in crisis work. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be even at work at all.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
thinking about past jobs I've had in physical buildings outside of crisis work, thinking about being in school even as a student, knowing that the other people in your class are going through the same stresses, and also
Hmm.
actually being able to be with them. You know,
Yeah.
if you know that there is a community there and for whatever reason you feel like you're not part of that, that's an extra type of pain, like you said, that
Yeah.
spiritual pain. But then thinking about other groups or other people who are lacking groups, how are they getting collective care? How are they able to access that? And it put me in mind of my neighbor who, I live alone and she lives alone, and she lost her husband last year. And so I know she needs community, and I know that she has, you know, she goes to a grief group and she goes to a church, but I also know that she is lacking that sense of collective care. And so one little thing that I do is call her from time to time. If I see her out there, I'll go and talk to her. I know that she had a fall, and so now I am, you know, going out of my way to care for her in the
Yeah.
small ways that I can. And she does the same thing for me. Just this morning she called and told me that my mailbox was open. The tiniest little things.
Yeah.
Really, it seems like they really add up.
It does. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be those little things. There's that, I forget who says it, but that saying that says like, do small things with great love. And
Mm.
I wish I could attribute the person who said that, but if maybe on another podcast. But that is where it's important, like you said. And I know that we wanted to talk about what, like, how this looks like in real life, and so I think you did a great job of introducing what it looks like in our homes or in our
Mm-hmm.
neighborhoods. Is that you don't have to necessarily live with other people to have that community or to
Mm-hmm.
be able to care collectively for the people around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know that when I, you know, before I made this connection with my neighbor, it was really lonely. You know, I
Mm.
have friends, I have stuff to do outside of the home, but it's lonely. And now just knowing that right across the street, there's somebody who, you know, we share care. And that's really, I did not expect it to be so powerful, but it is.
So there is a house right up the street, and they are a short-term foster placement. So they always have different ages and different amounts and different types of kiddos that are staying with them. And so every probably couple of months, they will do a get to know your neighbors night where they have the kids organize snacks and decorate, and then and they go and put little notes on everybody's door, and that we all come together, and we're always meeting new people. But then it also too helps us to have that sense of community, so that if you're, whether you're home by yourself or not, or even if you do live with other people, you still have people that you can go to if something happens, if you've got a question, if you just need somebody to grab your mail. Those little things really do mean a lot, just to even be acknowledged. I think so many people live so isolated. We have the reassurance program at Contact too, that just having somebody call you or say hello is really important for us to take care of one another.
Right. The tiniest thing, just, hey, I'm
Hmm.
thinking about you. Amazing. So, so powerful. I also
Yeah.
love in that story you told about the foster placement home, the kids were the ones who left the notes.
Yeah. They're
And
the best.
yeah, we want the kids to feel connected, and instead of waiting for other people to make that connection and show that care, the kids are doing that first, and that's a really, really cool thing.
Yeah. I think having the ability to affect positive change on your environment, no matter what your age, is something that's really helpful, and it helps people to feel like they matter and that they
Mm.
belong and that they're part of that larger group. And especially for those of us that are experiencing a tough point in our lives for whatever reason, being connected to other people is just so important. When we talk about safety plans, Azita knows this, but maybe not everybody listening or watching. When we interact with someone who's having thoughts of suicide, one of the things we do is a safety plan. And we will specifically want to identify places where you can be around other people. You don't have to talk about your thoughts of suicide or even talk about how you're feeling. Just going to a coffee shop and being around other people can be something that's really beneficial and can promote safety and well being for people.
Yeah, it's that almost a co-regulation, even if you're not interacting with these people in the coffee shop, just being around people
Yeah.
really speaks to that social animal thing. You know,
Yeah.
if we're in a place where other people are safe, maybe I'm kind of safe too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think we talk about we talked about the like our communities, our neighborhoods, and then especially as a family therapist when you're talking about those groups that live together. So whether it be a family or a group of friends or roommates, we are engaging in collective care when we are sharing household tasks, when we
Mm.
are understanding how our moods impact the moods of others, when we are making sure that we're caring for our relationships. There's that give and take within our homes. So we take care of the people that we live with, we take in our home, we take care of the people that live in our community and our neighborhoods, and we also have to take care of each other at work too. So what do you see as ways that we engage in collective care where we work?
Where we work. Well, for context, if folks don't know, at Contact Caroline, we are almost all remote. Small number of people work in an office, and the rest of us are all over the country. We use Slack. It is what we call our virtual office. We have every day people jump on, they say, "Hi, I'm here." They say, "How's it going?" We have a channel for people on shift to communicate with each other, say, I'm here, I'm taking my break, I'm leaving, I need help." All of that stuff happens in one place. Then we also have lots of other channels where people can communicate on a more personal or less work related level. So let's just talk about music a little bit. Let's just, hey, this is what I'm listening to today. That's my favorite channel. Or hey, this is my new hobby that I got. One of the crisis counselors is really into like fragrances. And so she's all the time posting about, this is a new fragrance that I got, and here is this thing. And so many people are invested in her hobby, and they have these really cool conversations about it. There's a channel where people can post, hey, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
You and I, Michelle, every single morning, one of the two of us will say, "Hey, how's it going?" And I think something that's really important is that when you ask me that and I tell you, I know that you actually want to know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's I think that's important for sure is we have those pleasantries which are great, but whether you're in person or whether you're remote, to really mean it when you ask somebody else, and to be able to, even if you don't have the time right then for that coworker. So say you're not remote, say you work in an office space and somebody that's normally bubbly and happy might be sitting there kind of staring down to their coffee. Even if you've got a meeting in 2 minutes, it's important to be like, how are you? And if they express maybe that they're struggling, to say, I've got to hit a meeting, but after that, I'm going to come by your office and see how you're doing and give you that time and space because I do really care about you. And I think knowing that we care about one another, even if we're coworkers, there's different boundaries that we all want to uphold, or comfort levels maybe with our coworkers versus our friends. But just making sure that we are caring about one another in whatever extent we feel comfortable, I think is really important. So, I mean, at
Hmm.
work, whether you're in person or whether you're remote, you've got to get to know your coworkers. You've got to have time to explore their interests, to share things that maybe are outside of just agenda items. And I think that's one thing that a lot of us will feel guilty if we spend a few minutes maybe getting off topic or not being super productive during those hours that we're working, but that's valuable time to spend with someone or to digress in a meeting when everybody's having a belly laugh about a funny story somebody told. That's valuable. That makes it so that I want to come to work more. I remember I had a coworker in their past that used to always say, when was the last time you had some fun at work? If you can't remember, you need to make some fun.
I love that. Make some fun. We can make fun. I love that. And that's actually really important in my life is making fun. I do a lot of things, all of my hobbies really involve making fun or participating in fun as a group. Like I really love karaoke. Really, it's just such a passion of
We
mine.
all of us that work with Azita know about her love of karaoke.
It is so silly how much I love it, but it is so powerful. So many people will say karaoke is therapy. And
Mhm.
when you first hear that, it's like, okay, haha, you get whatever. But it's true because you're in this room with people who are being vulnerable with each other by getting up there and singing, who are applauding each other, who are saying, "Oh, that was awesome. I love when I hear you. That song is so great." And you get to bond, sometimes with friends, sometimes with strangers, but everybody is in there being a little bit vulnerable,
Mhm.
taking the time to listen and to clap, and it feels like care. It I think it is care.
Yeah,
And
it's a
yeah.
great example of how collective care looks like in society. Karaoke and the way that you bring that and anytime we travel for work, you're looking for a karaoke place. So I think that's a great way to segue into what does collective care look like in society? Your
Yeah.
love for karaoke and sharing that and the community that you're part of. I know that you've talked a lot about how that's a great example of collective care.
Yes, absolutely. Just being together and other things as well. Like I enjoy going to camping festivals. And you hear a lot about that. There are some festivals that are, there's togetherness and it's really fun to go to a concert with a whole bunch of people, be in the same crowd and cheering. There's a lot to say for that, a
Hmm.
lot to be said. But are we also taking care of each other while we're there? Are we actually showing up with the expectation that if I need something, people are going to help me? And I think that it's very powerful to go into a place where all of my creature comforts, all of the things that I might really need to get through this week or this weekend, maybe I don't have them. Maybe somebody's going to have to help me. Maybe I see
Hmm.
somebody who's really struggling. Like once, I'll tell a little tiny anecdote. Before I was any good at camping, I didn't bring boots. I only had sandals. It rained for days. My feet were so sad. And somebody gave me socks. I took the time to actually care for my feet, like put my feet in their lap. What a powerful thing to do
Hmm.
for somebody else. And that was really powerful for me. And now I know that is something that we all need to do for each other.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's probably one of the most humble things that anybody can have is to have to rely on others for a
Yeah.
basic need. That
Mm-hmm.
that goes to like the takeaways of like what does collective care look like? It's based in authenticity, vulnerability, allowing yourself to be helped, treating other people like they want to be treated. I don't know if a lot of us know about the golden rule, which is, most of our moms have said treat others how you want to be treated. But the platinum rule is that you treat others how they want to be treated. That's collective care. That is
Mm-hmm.
taking into account somebody else's needs and adapting the way that you engage with them to meet their needs on their level.
Mm-hmm. And that goes right back to that understanding and that listening, that
Hmm.
curiosity, because how are you going to know that empathy versus sympathy? I
Yeah.
can definitely guess how I would love to treat you the way that I would love to be treated because I know that very well. But if
Hmm.
I want to help, if I want to really be there for you, I have to know what you need. And
Yeah.
the only way I can know that is to know you and to
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah. And I think that goes to that whole thing about caring for one another is essential to pretty much everything we do as human beings. So why does collective care matter? It matters because it does things like it fights isolation. You were talking about your neighbor, and we've talked about people that reach out to 988. We've talked about coworkers. It really does. It reminds us. We talked about the kiddos up the street, that it reminds people that they're not alone. And so it really does replace that loneliness with that deep community connection. And every time I think of loneliness, Azita, I think about what you taught me about loneliness.
The statistic,
Yes.
the
Share it
statistic,
again.
yes, the statistic is that loneliness, chronic loneliness, is as detrimental to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15 cigarettes a day. And we all know how dangerous smoking is for your health.
Yeah.
We've all seen that image of the black lungs. And we know also that quitting smoking, and the longer that you go after quitting smoking, the more your lungs heal and clear. And eventually, I think it's 10 years or something, they can start to look like they never were black like that, that they were just as they used to be. And so I think that's maybe a pretty good metaphor as well. Like maybe you did not have that collective care. Maybe you have been emotionally, socially siloed for a long time, but you enter a community, or your community starts to focus on the collective care. Then I think the health of that togetherness can really improve.
Imagine if we somehow had warnings about loneliness to the same like degree that we have warnings about alcohol and substances and cigarettes. It's
A PSA.
we don't, yeah, we don't view it that way, but I think we hear more and more this loneliness epidemic. We've heard so much about this.
Yeah.
Collective care is the antidote to that.
Boom. Yes, absolutely. Collective care is the antidote.
Yeah. And
That's beautiful.
it builds trust. It builds, I mean, what you talked about with your neighbors, what we've talked about with your karaoke teams, with our organization at Contact, and how we do things in 988. It creates those safe, non-judgmental spaces where we can be vulnerable and not feel judged and feel together and feel like people understand us. Those are those things that are going to help us feel connected and really fight that loneliness piece that so many of us are experiencing. And it really just takes sometimes a kind word or a step forward, or somebody maybe pushing a little. I'm an introvert, so I've heard that every introvert needs to have an extrovert adopt them. I think in some situations that's Azita has adopted me and helped me with things. You're not the first extrovert that's had to adopt me and do those things, but I think that's where we have to just really nudge one another with love to open up and to be willing to rely on other people. Can be really scary for some of us, but when you do, it's such a relief.
Yes. And I think that kind of points to vulnerability again. Like, yes, the vulnerability of needing help and asking for help, but I feel like there's also a vulnerability in being the first person to offer help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, is this okay? Is this appropriate? Am I going to be rejected? Am I going to look like I'm trying too hard? I feel like you can have in your heart this desire to care actively, but not knowing how it's going to be received might kind of inhibit you showing that authentically.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, if you try to help somebody and you get shot down, then
It
you
can be
might not be
embarrassing.
so inclined to help someone in the future.
Hmm.
It's vulnerability on both parts. I think you're really you hit on something right there, and that it hits on this whole idea of we are such an individualistic culture in the United States, and there are cultures that are more collectivist, and there's positive and negatives to both, but I think the more that we see our health as interconnected, the better we understand how to move forward to combat some of these things that are really plaguing our society. We deal so often with people who feel alone, who feel judged, who don't feel safe, who don't feel accepted for who they are. And as we care for one another, we really do try to combat that feeling of isolation, and try to
Hmm.
help as many people as we can to feel accepted and involved and not alone at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it reminds me of something that we said right at the very beginning today, that sometimes people are feeling that isolation when they're not isolated. Like
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned earlier, Context Reassurance Program. And that program, actually, that's going to be our podcast topic next month. I'm very excited to
Teaser.
tell you about it. Yes. But that program, we make daily social calls to older adults who are homebound and maybe are not able to get around that much and who are dealing with isolation. And so that seems like, if you're not able to leave your home, if you're not having conversations with people every day, having that one friendly voice who calls you and says, "Hey, how's it going? I'm thinking about you. Here's what I did today. What did you do today?" Just a nice conversation. Amazing. But
Yeah.
it's not always like that where you're alone, actually. You can feel alone when you're surrounded by people.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's there, and that's where that vulnerability and that being willing to say that you're struggling. So many of us that struggle with, especially depression, experience that I can be in a room full of people and feel completely alone because you feel so disconnected from the world and you've had that happen for so long. And so it can be hard to take that leap and grab the hand maybe that's reaching out to try to support
Hmm.
you. And so the more that we normalize collective care, the more that we talk about it, for those people that are watching or for listening, if you can take this forward, we always love to give you a tool and we'll do that here in just a second. But the more that we can start to talk about this is important and get collective care as in the front of people's minds as self care, I think we'll start to see some positive impacts. It's that like snowball turns into an avalanche type of effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talking about depression, it made me think of this sense of burdensomeness that
Mm,
many, many people have about asking for help, me included. My neighbor, happy to let my dog out if I'm going to be gone for a while. Hard for me to ask her to do that, even though she tells me every day I'm happy to do it. It would give me something to do, and I still have a hard time asking. So then you have somebody with depression or thoughts of suicide, and with those things, it's really common to have this sense of burdensomeness, that I am a burden to other people and I have to hide that, or I can't ask for help because I'm a burden already. And so I think that having this understanding of collective care, even if it's not an understanding, but it's the environment that not only can I receive the care, but this is also a place where I can give care. One of the ways that we can target the sense of perceived burdensomeness is by helping that person give back. Give. If you have a way of giving, that will help you to believe you're not a burden. And so in this collective care community, you can give and receive, and that's just the understanding that that's how it's going to be, that you're safe to ask and to give.
and I think that's a great thing for people who may be hesitant to reach out to 988 is I know we've talked
Mm,
about how this work is hard. It's hard to be a crisis counselor. It's hard to talk to individuals who are in crisis. And I can guarantee you, every single one of our crisis counselors, myself included, when I take crisis conversations, I'm sure I won't speak for you and you can weigh in on this, but to help somebody, there's no better feeling than that. To be able to be there for somebody, it is hard, it is draining, and it is probably the most rewarding experience. It is an honor to get to be with people on their worst days.
absolutely. Honor is the word that I most often use. I say thank you to each person that I've talked to who has trusted me, who
Mm-hmm.
has been vulnerable enough to be authentic and to take that step to ask for help and connect with me, really connect with me. And like you said, the most rewarding thing is to really be able to connect. And sometimes people reach out and they don't find the connection that they're looking for. And I just encourage those people, ask again. You
Yeah.
know, we're people on the other side of this and we all want to help. And if the person you talk to first, you don't jive with, you don't connect with, please try again.
Yeah.
Because we are here. We're here. We're gonna be here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we want to do this.
You're not going to connect with every single person. You meet people all the time that you just don't jive with. I've told people before, finding a therapist, finding a
Yeah.
hairdresser, finding a doctor, you have to find that right fit for you. And so Yeah, I think that's a great thing for people who might be thinking about reaching out to 98 is if you reach out and you don't find that like deep connection with that first well-meaning person, that's okay. You can reach back out and try again, and you might get somebody who you feel that connection whether you're calling, texting, or
Hmm.
chatting. So, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. I love this chat. I love talking about this. So here as we wrap up, I think we always want to give you a tool for a tough moment. And Azita, you talked a little bit earlier about kind of passing somebody in the hall or asking them how are they doing, and maybe we want to do that or approach that differently. That might be the tool for the tough moment. So what did you have as an idea for our viewers and listeners as what they can take out of this podcast and contribute to collective care?
Great question. I am going to call back active listening as our tool for tough moments. When we say, how are you? Mean it, actually mean it. And not just mean it, but follow that up with the behavior of actually listening, actually intentionally taking steps to help that person feel understood, to understand what they're going through, because that communicates care on such a visceral level. I think it truly feels like I am with you when you take the time to understand what I'm saying. And I think if that is the expectation, that when you ask me how I am, that you mean it, and that is true of not just one person, but of many people in the group. I think that is going to be so powerful that I am worth it. Like I am worth somebody's 5 minutes. I'm worth their, $3 cup of coffee. Like, hey, you know what? I want to talk to you for a few minutes and we'll go and have some coffee. I think that intentionally holding back those, like that urge to fix or urge to give advice or to center ourselves, or I've been in that situation, I know just how you feel. There is so much connection to be had just in those little how are you doing moments. And then when you do have the opportunity to talk on a deeper level, all the more. And on the other side, it's hard, it's scary, but try asking for help. Try when someone says, how are you? Actually say, don't assume that they're just looking for the, I'm fine, thanks, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
Actually say so. And when somebody actually says so, don't think, gosh, they're oversharing because you asked them. Make that
Exactly.
interaction, that short interaction, real every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I'm getting a picture here of that tool for the tough moment, is if I see someone that I know and maybe they don't have that fire, that spark that they normally have, or their words feel different, or maybe that text that they sent is shorter than typical. When I ask them, "How are you?" and they're like, "Oh, I'm fine," I might come back and say, "No, like, how are you?"
Right.
And I might leave some space. And if I do that, they're more likely to fill that space with that vulnerability and that authenticity of what they're really feeling.
Yes. The power of silence. Absolutely. I think just standing there looking at them and waiting for more, that's an invitation. If you're inviting me to share, not rushing at all, I'm probably going to maybe say a little more, be a little
Yeah.
more open.
Letting them know that there's that time and you really do care. Oh, I think that's something that our listeners and our viewers can definitely take forward as a tool of meaning it when you ask
Mean it.
somebody how they're doing, and make sure that you're conveying that you've got the time. If there's more to their answer than I'm good or I'm doing great for the day. So I appreciate you explaining that and giving that challenge to people that are reaching out. So as we wrap up here today, did you want to just remind people of the teaser for next time that we meet, what we're talking about?
Yes. Yes. One of my very favorite topics is older adult mental health. So, next month's podcast will be on older adult mental health and our reassurance program at Contact Careline, which is a very cool program that supports older adults in the community in staying connected and experiencing some of that collective care. So, I
I think
really
that'll
look
be
forward to telling you all about it.
it'll be a great follow up to this episode for sure. Well, thank you to everyone who has decided to listen or to watch this podcast. We really enjoy making these, and we hope that you enjoyed that topic of collective care. And as we wrap up today, I think we appreciate your time, and we hope that you take care of yourselves and each other. So we'll see you next time.